Hello everybody. A patron asks, who are the Khemetians? We will try to answer him. Now, don't forget my conference in July. We will talk about an ancient axis mundi in Victoria between two volcanoes, an ancient civilization that built stone circles. It's going to be dramatic and amazing. And I'll talk for 75 minutes. Other people will talk as well about ancient Australia. Now, the term Khemetian is a curious one. It pops up in the Stephen S. Mehler book, The Land of Osiris 2001. It is a thoroughly entertaining read in which the author Stephen Mehler encounters a mysterious figure, Abd Al Hakim Awyan, an elder who lived near the pyramids and led tours, and who claimed that he was one of the guardians of the knowledge of a pre-Egyptian civilization, which he called the Khemetians. These people lived near the pyramids in the height of Giza. In the heart of Giza, the ancient Land of Osiris, which Awyan claims was called Bu Wisr in Egyptian. This is a claim that Mehler seems to have accepted at face value. Hakim is a fountain of self-alleged information about early Egypt, claiming that the Sphinx was built 35,000 years ago, that the tunnels at Giza were built to bring water to the plateau, and that they were built over 10,000 years ago, extending 30 miles to the south. Hakim calls the pyramids Per-Netta, which means house of nature. So it seems nature in English and netta in Egyptian are the same word. And he states that the Khafre pyramid was the first to be built, being on top of the highest point of Giza. That makes sense to me. And when I read this 10 years ago, I thought to myself, well, Hakim must be the real deal, as this is precisely the direction I was headed in my own pyramid research. Pyramids not as a tomb, but as something else actually connected to nature, and that is a more realistic approach. Hakim provided some interesting information as well, such as that the word Maya means across the water in Egyptian. Hakim also states that Mer, the Egyptian word for pyramid, means beloved. Now, I actually don't agree with everything Hakim claims, but I think he is much closer to the truth than modern archaeologists. His claims resonate with us, and we find ourselves accepting most of them. They seem reasonable, practical, despite the outlandish dates which he offers up, and they seem to make sense. The word Khemetian, according to Hakim and archaeologists as well, comes from the consonants KMT, which is one way the Egyptians referred to their country in former times. Mehler seems to also refer to the Old Kingdom as Khemetian Egypt. Mehler refers to Hakim's knowledge as the indigenous tradition of Egypt, quote unquote, over and over, with little evidence that this is actually true. It could well be that Hakim was descended from some Egyptian priesthood, and if so, it's a unique glimpse into real Egyptian teachings, but I now think, in retrospect, that Hakim himself did not have the full picture. Hakim claims that the names of the kings of the old kingdoms are not their real names, but titles. In regards to Giza, Hakim claims that the main purpose of the underground tunnels at Giza was to create a lake in front of the Sphinx and to bring water to the plateau. The story overall is a good one. It resonates with us. It tells us there is some oral legend or mythology handed down by a secret order throughout the entirety of Egyptian history, or rediscovered by this order, being kept alive by an ancient tradition of a land before the pyramids. And naturally, the implication of all this is that the pyramids could be seen as Khemetian in construction rather than Egyptian in construction. Hakim himself, it's an interesting name. In Arabic, it's one of the names of God, and it means all wise. And Hakim is now deceased as of 2008. Now, there are some problems with all this, and let's get into the name Khemetian. So, the name Khemetian for me can mean one of two things. For starters, to me, the word Khemetian potentially indicates the word Hamite being an alternate form. These are the pre-Arab people of Egypt, the Copts, Hamites, the Arabs being considered as Semites. So this term Ham is the biblical term for the pre-Arab populations who lived in North Africa. Ancient Egypt is described as a Hamitic or Hamito-Semitic, or another word for it is Afro-Asiatic language in the modern parlance. The Hamitic language survives today in the non-Arab languages of North Africa, such as among the Tamazi people who speak a language called Amazi, and they have a curious alphabet indeed. Khemitians thus seem to be most obviously Hamitians, and if so, the name doesn't really have much significance because, well, who are the Hamitians? Then again, maybe it is supposed to represent presumably even the pre-Hamites. I guess it means Cam, like Cambridge, as author Ralph Ellis suggests, or I would even suggest Cambodia, the tribe of Cam or Ham, and the lands they may have settled. Graham Hancock has made connections between Egypt and Thailand, Cambodia in his book on the Sphinx. And I've always thought that the people of that region, the Thai people, are quite strange-looking Asians because they actually have long legs and Asians tend not to. Okay, but there's another possibility for all this, and I think it's a more likely one, to be honest with you, because we don't know which tribe originally carried the name Ham, and that tribe doesn't seem to exist in Africa. But there is a tribe by this name in ancient Europe, and it's very widespread, suggesting they were very good at conquest. And guess what? It's a tribe from the Near East, from Asia, and from Eastern Europe. And before I name what this tribe is, in Germanic, Cam is a word in Germanic. It means arrive, or it even means house. So a tribe by this name might even mean a people of the homestead or a settled people. It seems in ancient times, entire countries would sometimes uproot themselves and move elsewhere, as they would find existence intolerable within a certain set, living with a certain set of enemies living nearby, and this was not an uncommon thing. Borders were not fixed as today, and countries were literally in a state of constant warfare and incursion. So, you see, the Khemetians, as mentioned by Mehler, might very well be the Cimmerians. These are basically Scythians in ancient times. Look at their distribution on the map. Their tribe name has the same root. So if the Khemetians are real, I think they were probably Cimmerians from Central Eastern Europe who invaded Egypt in ancient times, pre-Egypt. The root of biblical Ham may well be Cimmerians from European Scythia, or whatever it was called in 2000 BC or much earlier, and these people, I believe, once conquered Egypt. The Cimmerians had an ancestral homeland in an unknown place called Gamir, and for most of their known history, they kept invading to the south, invading Urartu, Colchis, which was the home of Medea and the Golden Fleece, on the eastern coast of the Black Sea, and even Assyria in 715 to 713 BC. If Egypt was once called Cam, as many suggest, I would suggest that is because they were conquered by the Cimmerians at one time. Famously, the Cimmerians forced King Midas to suicide. This is the man with the Midas touch, and everything he touched turned to gold. And we looked at the gate, the so-called Gate of Midas, the Tomb of Midas, in an earlier video. Fearful of capture by the Cimmerians, he drank poison. It seems since the time of the Trojan War, Anatolia was under continuous pressure from external tribes, the Greeks from one side, maybe the Cimmerians from the north. Crimea seems to derive its name from a homeland of the Cimmerians, the Black Sea region and Caucasus, and it seems to have been an ancestral home. And one does wonder if this makes them related to the long skulls mentioned by Brian Forster, and if not, the same people. However, the Welsh, with almost the same name, the Cumma, as Baron Blackett and Alan Wilson pointed out, because they say the Welsh are from the Cimmerians, are actually quite different looking and dark-haired people who may nonetheless be related but mixed with another race as we see them today. Cimmeria is actually the name of what is referred to as the Bosphorus Kingdom, and I think it was back in 2017 I showed that their round tombs have Giza-like internal architecture as if they are actually pyramids. And this led me to hypothesize that these are much older than the Iron Age, as is supposed, and these are in fact a similar age or even predate the Giza pyramids in my opinion. I speculated the people were from here, the Giza people were from here, in part. Scythians possibly built similar buildings, which is why such architecture, similar architecture, is also found in their namesake Scotland, namely the strange Giza-like yet very different Maes Howe. I made videos about this not knowing that Laird, Scranton and Author had earlier come to similar conclusions, and even those before him. One sees from their distribution also that these are the people Maria Gimbutas referred to as Old Europe. Gimbutas speculated that in Old Europe, goddess worship ruled before later Iron Age Aryan tribes from the east, or even Bronze Age tribes, brought a patriarchal religion along in 2000 BC, and they ended this religion. And of course I noted that with the end of this religion, pyramid building also ended. Now, Old Europe corresponds, it seems, to areas which were ice-free 10,000 years ago, and on some of her maps, Old Europe includes Egypt. And of course, you see from their distribution, they are living in Old Europe. Are these the Vinca people of 5000 BC? No one really knows the race of the Cimmerians. They disappear in the 5th century BC. It's been hypothesized they are Welsh, Celts, Germans, Slavs. Take your pick, really. They're actually a bit too early to be any of these peoples. They could be a mix. They could be ancestors of all of them. If the Khemetians are not Hamites, or even if they are Hamites and are a tribal name, they are probably, in my opinion, the Khemetians who included Egypt, the Cimmerians who included Egypt in unknown times. So this question doesn't really have an answer yet, but I look to tribal names for an answer, and this is what I suspect. Thank you.